Hello YouTube and welcome to today's video. Today we are going to talk about the Old Testament and we're going to talk about Amalek because we know that recently the leader of the Z State, Bibi Netanyahu, he has compared the Palestinians to Amalek. So we want to see what he's really talking about and why he has made that comparison. So hopefully you will find it very interesting. So please stick around until the end so you can see our conclusions. Before we get started, you know the drill. You need to like the video. Please subscribe to our channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And then you'll be notified when more interesting content comes out. So please share it with your friends. Write some comments. Help out the algorithm because the algorithm is not very smart and it doesn't like these kind of videos that we have to make. So before we get started, we're going to look at a news article that looks very interesting. So it says Israel linked boycotts hurting U.S. brand in the Middle East, according to Bloomberg. So yeah, many people in the Middle East, and not only in the Middle East, but other parts of the world have stopped buying things from McDonald's and other similar type of big companies because, well, these big companies, they're supporting the Z State and they are supporting genocide that's going on in Gaza because their prime minister thinks that the Palestinians are Amalek. So that's what we're going to look at today. So we look very quickly at this article. It says numerous major Western brands have shed customers and seen profits dented due to boycott campaigns in the Middle East. So, yeah, the Arab people, even if their leaders are asleep and lacking their morning coffee, it seems like the Arab people drink their Arab coffee and they're quite awake. So, yeah, when I went to the Middle East and I drank Arab coffee, it kept me awake very well into the next morning. I didn't miss the Fajr Salat, so I definitely didn't get any sleep. So, yeah, the Arab coffee, it'll keep you awake. And so that's why they've switched from Starbucks and McDonald's and back to their Arab coffee so they can get more done. So, yeah, it's saying that people, they are buying more local brands in protest of these big companies supporting the Z State. So, it names quite a few: KFC, Pizza Hut, Krispy Kreme, Hardee's. Yeah, these Middle Eastern ones have dropped quite a bit on the Saudi stock exchange. So, and that has to do with some boycotts. Coca-Cola also seems to have been boycotted, as well as Nestle. So, not only in the Middle East, also in other Muslim countries like Malaysia, McDonald's has lost a lot of money and is trying to sue the Malaysian people for not buying their food. So, yeah, these companies, they're quite interesting what they do. So, yeah, it's talking about how the local brands have seen a boost in business due to the boycotts. So, according to Bloomberg, in Kuwait, homegrown coffee stores saw earnings soar over the past 3 months. People are drinking Arab coffee again, and they're not missing their Fajr Salat. So, that's probably pretty good. So, as customers largely stop visiting Starbucks, also says the Jordanian coffee chain Astro Labe saw sales jump by 30%. So, yeah, that's very good. People are buying local. Probably a good thing to do. So, yeah, that's very interesting news. So, yeah, now we're going to switch over and talk about the Old Testament and Amalek and why it appears in the Bible. And before we do that, you know the drill. Please like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, help out the algorithm. So, the algorithm needs your help. So, we're going to go ahead and start with Deuteronomy. So, Deuteronomy is in the Torah. It's one of the 5 books that supposedly was given to Moses. It's part of the Tanakh as well, or the Hebrew Bible. So, many scholars, most of the biblical scholars, they say it was written several hundred years after Moses. And even if you go to the end of Deuteronomy, you'll find where it talks about his death. So it's quite likely that Moses didn't write about his death. So, yeah, it seems to have been written quite after his time. But we have some very interesting verses in Deuteronomy chapter 20. So, we've also made some videos about other parts of Deuteronomy, and you can go back and watch those as well. But today, we're going to look at chapter 20 and verse 17. And it starts off by saying, "But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee." The next verse, "That they teach you not to do after all their abominations, which they have done unto their gods." That's a lowercase g. So, "Ye shall sin against the Lord your God." So, yeah, there's only one God, as it's saying here. That's with an uppercase G. So, that's referring to the God of Moses, who is also the God of all the other prophets, including Jesus and Muhammad. Peace be upon them. So, when we read on, it says, "When thou shalt besiege a city for a long time, and making war against it to take it, thou shalt not destroy the trees thereof by forcing an axe against them, for thou mayest eat of them, and thou shalt not cut them down. For the tree of the field is man's life, to employ them in the siege." So, yeah, they're being commanded not to destroy the trees. So, yeah, that's probably a very good thing. So, yeah, that's very interesting. So, that's a very interesting verse because it talks about all these different groups that they're commanded to go to war against. Sounds quite vicious. So, yeah, and actually, we have some interesting thing here, and it was written by a professor at the Zaitana Institute, and his name is Ali Atai, but he is defining here what is harem. So, yeah, when the Christians or the Jewish people or the non-Muslims ask about jihad, well, we should ask them about harem, because harem, it appears in the Bible many, many times, and we just saw an example of what is harem. So, and as Dr. Atai says it's found in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Joshua, and 1 Samuel, and he even put an ETC, which means it's found in more places. So, according to the Strong's Concordance, which is basically a dictionary of the biblical terms, so harem is a Hebrew word. It means to ban, devote, destroy utterly, completely destroy, dedicate for destruction, and exterminate. Yeah, it sounds quite lovely. So we'll go on to one more of his slides. And yeah, he's just talking about what we just read. An example, and that should be of, not or, harem. Deuteronomy 20, 16, and 17. So, "You shall save nothing alive that breathes." So we saw where you're supposed to save the trees. But when we go back to Deuteronomy 20, and we look at verse 16, which we have not read yet, it says, "But of the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth." Well, I guess technically the trees, they also breathe, but I think they're talking about people and maybe animals. So, yeah, that means killing everyone. That would include women and children and old people and all the other people who are not fighting against you. And, yeah, total extermination explicitly ordered by the text. Yep, that is genocide, ordered in the Bible. So, in the Quran, you will not find things like that. Now you might find, you have to fight them where they fight you, but they have to fight you first, and that would probably not include little children or old grandmothers and grandfathers. So that generally includes military. So quite a big difference. So we will go and look at one more thing he has written here. Another example of, not or, but of harem is also found in Joshua. And Joshua ben Nun, he is another prophet after Moses. So he appears after Moses in the Bible. And this is in his book. that he probably didn't write to, according to the scholars. But this is in chapter 6, verse 21, and he even gives the Hebrew text here, which I can't read, but some people can read it. It says, "And they, the Israelites, utterly destroyed, exterminated all that was in the city, both men and women, young and old, and ox and sheep and donkeys, with the edge of a sword." So, yeah, that sounds quite terrible. And, yeah, now he says here, just in the Old Testament, in the Torah, there are 613 mitzvot, or commandments, that were given to the Jews. And number 528, it says, "Leave none alive of the 7 nations." So we just saw the 7 nations, who they were, and there were quite a few of them. So, yeah, there's a lot of different nations. And it says, "Leave none of them alive." So nowadays, Jewish and Christian scholars, they have to deal with this text. So there's quite a few different ways that they can deal with this text. And traditionally, the Jewish and Christian scholars, they said that Harem was of the 7 nations, was only for this time, the time of Moses and Joshua, at that place, and never again. It's finished, abrogated. The Christians, they have abrogated most of the Old Testament when Paul came around and he decided to change everything and mix in his Roman theology. We've done videos about that. We'll do more in the future, so you can go and see some of those. But some scholars, Jewish scholars, not most, but some of them, say that Harem can happen in the Holy Land, but it will only happen one more time, and that would be when the Jewish Messiah returns. So, yeah, they're waiting very eagerly for their Messiah, but he hasn't appeared yet. So, yeah, that's what they are doing. They're waiting for the Messiah. So, also, Christians are also waiting for the Messiah, and Muslims are also waiting for the Messiah. So, they have some different ideas on who the Messiah is, because the Jewish people, they didn't accept Jesus even as a prophet, but they are waiting for a Messiah from the house of David. So, and they say when their Messiah comes, that everyone eventually will accept him, and they will know with certainty that he is the Messiah. And the Christians, they say the same thing about Jesus when he comes back again, and they believe that Jesus will be God, or is God. However, Muslims, we don't believe that Jesus is God, but that he was a prophet, and we also believe he is the Messiah, and he's going to return back. And again, just like the Jews and Christians say, we also believe that everyone will accept him as the Messiah. It will take some time, but they will accept him before he dies. So that's basically a similarity in the three religions. They have a bit of a different viewpoint on how it gets there, but they all have agreement on what will happen. They might not agree on how it will happen, but they agree on what will happen. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ideas. So, now, the interesting thing is that Benjamin Netanyahu, he has used the term Amalek against the Palestinians. So we looked a bit at Harem, and we can also find some things about Amalek. And yeah, there are some other verses in the Bible that refer to Amalek, and we are looking for who they are. Okay, here we go. So we open back up from Dr. Attai. He says, "Who or what is Amalek for radical Jews?" So his definition, Dr. Attai, his definition of radical Judaism is basically the Z's. And as we know, and we've talked about in other videos, the Z group, well, they were not even started by religious people. And most of the Orthodox Jews, they are actually against the Z's. But we have some religious Orthodox Jews and also some other types of Jewish groups that are very pro-Z group. Some of that has to do with the Mustache Man, the former Austrian painter who controlled Germany in the 1940s, and he did a genocide over there. But there's also a long history of Europe doing that to the Jews, so that's where the idea of Zionism, the Z's, came along to create a homeland for the Jews. And at first, a lot of them, they didn't even agree on how to get there again, but they eventually got there with the help of the US and the UK. So, yeah, that is another very long topic that we can look at in another video. But, so, yeah, the former director of Israel Land Authority, Benzi Lieberman, in 2004, so that was 20 years ago, he said the Palestinians are Amalek, we will destroy them. So, yeah, that's very not good. So, and Bibi, as we've seen, he has talked about, you must remember what Amalek has done to you. So, yeah, Amalek, they appear in the Bible, and they also appear in the Old Testament, and we can find them in Exodus 17:14, which I believe I forgot to open up. But if you go to Exodus 17, you can see their reference. Their reference also appears in 1 Samuel, which is another book, and it refers to Saul, actually, a commandment to the king Saul. It was called Talut in Arabic, but we're going to look at the Bible in Exodus chapter 17, and we can see here in verse 8, it said, then came Amalek and fought with Israel and Rephidim. That's probably a place. So they fought against the children of Israel, and at that time, they were being led by Moses. So, and it says in the Bible, Exodus is also one of the 5 books of the Torah. So it's called the Pentateuch. There are 5 books. Pentateuch is the Greek word. So it comes before Deuteronomy. And it says, Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So, yeah, there are also other verses in Deuteronomy and also in 1 Samuel that basically say the same thing, to commit herem, to blot out Amalek, to exterminate them, to kill even the little children. And yeah, it's very terrible. So, as I said, most of the religious scholars, they have come up with different ways to handle these texts. And most of the mainline scholars, some of them, maybe they even debate the authenticity, and some of them have said it's abrogated, or it was only for this point in time. So that is the vast majority of Christian and Jewish scholars. So it's only the very extreme ones that are actually in support of making the Palestinians or any other group into modern-day Amalek. And that one argument that they have used is that, well, they have all died out. We don't know who they are. So that commandment is no longer applicable. So, yeah, it's very interesting, though, to see when certain politicians, like Bibi Netanyahu, who doesn't seem to be very religious, decides to use the Torah or the Bible to support his agenda. That's something that many politicians around the world, including the Z-state politicians, love to do. So that's why we have to make these kind of videos. So now we have gone over who is Amalek and what is herem. So when we compare it to Islam, we know that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he had also created some rules of war. And of course, he was inspired by God, by Allah, and they are very just. So there are many different rules, such as don't kill the children and don't kill grandmas and grandpas. So, yeah, don't kill the sick people, don't destroy the trees. we saw where that's in the Bible. So, yeah, don't destroy things and only fight those who fight you. And you try to make peace if you can and use the war as a last resort. Sometimes it has to happen, unfortunately, but we do hope for peace. And the thing about Islam, also, they have protected the churches and the synagogues and other religious buildings. That is also something that was commanded by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we know that those things came from God, Allah. So, yep, hopefully that has been very interesting. And we invite you to subscribe to our channel and please like the video, help out the algorithm. You know the drill. Share it with your friends. So next time we can make some more interesting and enlightening content. So thank you for watching and we'll see you in the very next video.